I could be a stupid person.
If you think Trump won the tariff war with China, you'd probably let Stephen Miller babysit your kids.
Children will be taught to love America.
First of all, there is no deal. No deal. Trump surrendered after the markets fell, inflation rose, farmers went bankrupt, and his own party rebelled. But small and mid-sized businesses, dock workers, truckers, and 401ks, they shrunk like Tiny Finger's little hands.
Prove that I'm lying. Prove I didn't see your dick.
And it won't improve soon.
You are going to always have a baseline. I mean, there could be an exception at some point. We'll see. You know, somebody does something exceptional for us. That's always possible. But basically, you have a baseline of a minimum of 10%. And some of them will be much higher, 40%, 50%, 60%, as they've been doing to us over the years.
Now, let's examine the word deal and what's going on here. First of all, a tariff is a tax on us, just to be sure you know, right?
We've been talking about inflation for a long time, just how high prices have gone. When you put a tariff on a product, it is not that the other country gets taxed per se. It's that the cost gets pushed on to the consumer here in the United States. That's how it works. That is the economics of it. When people ask, what's the math? They say, oh, we're getting taxed. How are we getting taxed? I don't understand. It means that you're going to walk into Walmart, you're going to look at the product, and the price tag for the product that you want is going to cost more, not less. That's it.
Yeah.
It's that simple. And how former President Trump can speak the way he does about what he thinks the tariff is going to do, the idea that it's going to tax the Chinese or it's going to tax, it's just not the reality of the situation.
So Mantidi says he will cut additional tariffs on China to 30%, and China will cut additional tariffs on the U.S. to 10% for 90 days. In other words, Trump is lowering the tax on American businesses that he implemented from 145% to 30% while they try and make a deal. Now, while 145% was hard to imagine, this is easy to see. Cars are going to go from $30,000 to $40,000, and parts from $500 to $1,500, and et cetera, and et cetera. So, is there a Santa Claus? No, and there's no deal either.
I'm not sure that that businesses can be confident that we're going to hit the more harmonious times that we had prior to this administration.
The director of the National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, says that China made certain concessions when it came to allowing U.S. exporters to enter the Chinese market or certain aspects of the Chinese market. I wonder what you make of that. Is that a win that the White House can point to justify levying these tariffs to begin with?
Oh, it's not a win and it's not a justification, but more to the point, when the White House says we got some concessions, but I'm not telling you what they are, they told us this about the Britain-UK deal, and it turns out that the UK-US deal, that was actually not a deal. It was an agreement to have an agreement at some point in the future. So if it's not written down and signed and they're not willing to show us that, then I'm not sure I believe it.
I do wonder what you think might make some of these tariffs worth it. In other words, what your guideposts are for justifying the trade war that this White House has launched, if they do, in fact, make it so that supply chains are reconfigured and the U.S. is less reliant on China, as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent is suggesting the administration will continue to pursue. Do you see that as a win?
Boris, let's not tie ourselves up in knots trying to make sense of something that we can't make sense of.
And while Fox and their bag of eunuchs praise Trump, the people watching these shows are going to feel the pain.
This is an extraordinary first step in the right direction. And thanks to the strength of President Trump, Secretary Bessent and Ambassador Greer were able to cut this initial deal with China. And they also agreed to continue seriously discussing the grave impact that Chinese-produced fentanyl is having right here in the United States and our people.
A couple things here. China didn't reach out to Trump. Trump begged them to lower tariffs. But remember, there's still a 30% tax in place that wasn't there when Biden was president and the economy was strong. Go back and look at the numbers. These tariffs are killing businesses, 401ks, jobs, and our economy as a whole. So why did Trump enact them? I'll have that for you in a minute. But first, you want a really great high? Subscribe to Really American on YouTube and you'll feel like you're in a VW bus with Cheech and Chong.
Get in your left lane.
Left?
Right.
Right. Oh, right. Okay.
No, your left lane, man.
You said right. You said right or left?
And speaking of bad timing and drugs, the China fentanyl bullshit, Opioids are killing more Americans by the thousands than fentanyl. But that cartel, oh, that's American Pharma, and they own the Republican Party. Look, Republicans aren't underestimating how bad a 30% tariff on Chinese goods still is for U.S. consumers and inflation. They're simply lying for Tiny Finger's benefit. To keep it simple, it means that Walmart, the U.S.'s largest supporter of Chinese goods, will have to raise costs to cover the tariff, or lay people off to keep the prices down, or both. And who is the largest private employer of American workers? Walmart. There'll be big layoffs, like we recently seen at UPS and FedEx. Look, the economy is like an aircraft carrier. You can't just stop it on a dime in reverse direction. And it's all about consumer confidence, which is in the proverbial shitter. But this is how Trump operates. In his first 100 days, Trump issued an executive order ending Biden's executive order on lowering Medicare costs. Then he issued his own executive order and took credit for lowering Medicare. That's how it works in MAGA. Trump does something stupid, something terrible happens. Trump issues orders and claims he can solve the problem, and then reverses his stupid decision and claims victory. But not everyone on Fox is drinking the Kool-Aid.
The New York Times says Trump has blinked and blinked again, softening his rhetoric on tariffs and whether the plans to oust Fed Chairman Jerome Powell will happen. Here's what he originally said about Powell, and a couple of days later when asked if he still plans to fire him.
I don't think he's doing the job. He's too late, always too late, a little slow, and I'm not happy with him. I let him know it, and if I want him out, he'll be out of there real fast, believe me. None whatsoever. Never did. The press runs away with things. No, I have no intention of firing him.
Joining us now from Connecticut, Charlie Gasparino, senior correspondent with Fox Business Network.
The markets were the great equalizer here, particularly the bond market. When it looked like one night people were literally dumping our debt amid this whole tariff issue, that resulted in the pause. And listen, there's an economic reality here. If you're gonna, even though he's on very strong grounds about how we get screwed on trade, if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna really upend a huge portion of the economy, there's going to be some pain.
Yeah, Americans don't like pain, but who's causing that pain? That video was 2 weeks ago, but what's this guy on Fox Business saying now after this so-called deal? Trump raised tariffs on the world, and the markets, particularly the bond market, which we need to finance our debt, rebelled. Trump then was forced to back off. End of story. Film at 11 of the president spinning this as a major victory. I'm sorry I couldn't help myself. But what we've seen is a little lesson on how markets exert their power, how when you have to depend on them, as we still do, and remember, it's really the budget deficit that's causing the trade deficit, and we need the budget deficit to maintain our standard of living. You can't start a trade war with the world without bad stuff happening. And the bond market sell-off is what freaked traders out the most. Because when Treasury bonds fail, it's bad. It's how nations fall. It's like Melania seeing Trump naked on their wedding night. It's worse than you ever thought.
Goddamn right.
What you're about to hear could be disturbing.
Use my words against me and you'd be absolutely right.
Hail Trump!
That is crazy.
Woo-hoo! Drop your pants.
Tariff.
You're an idiot.
I don't want to talk about this stuff.
Am I wrong?
Yes.
Tick-tock!
You're in a lot of trouble, Donnie.
I think he's crazy.
I'm Chip Franklin.